All right, still working our way down the modulators here. Let's get into the gray range and everything below that. So I'm going to go ahead, make sure you have BPR hit, so you have a best preview render. And then we're going to go up here and we're going to reset our filter here. And then again, we'll crank up the paint color. This front color, we'll go ahead and make red. And in order for us to kind of see our object, temporarily what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mask, set it to -1, so it's just going to mask this background. And let's talk a little bit more about gray range. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit so we have a little bit easier selection here. We're going to zoom in, we're going to hit BPR render. And again, that filter paint color is just relegated to the background for now, just so I can see my object. So this gray range here, you can see it's set to 0. If I go ahead and crank it up to 100, you're going to see it's going to set it to the background shadow. If I take this mask and now set it to my object, you're going to see everything that's kind of light isn't red, and then everything that's dark is red. And how you set that is by setting these gray range values. Now you can just go through here and you can click this and you can make this dark one lighter. And as you make this lighter, it's going to start disregarding those darks that were in there. So now as we bring this up, it used to collect everything that was really dark. And then as we make this minimum value lighter, it's going to start dumping off those dark blacks. So now you can see we're coloring the inside of these shadow areas with a paint color, which is red, but disregarding the darkest values, because as we grab this G1 and make it lighter, these values won't be included. Same thing will happen with the white. So if I take this one here and I start extending this out, red's going to start getting into the lighter areas. And if I make it all the way white, now it's going to grab very much of those white areas. And essentially all it's disregarding is these low end values right here. So, and again, as I drag this down, now it's going to start leaving my very light values alone and only be relegated to my darker values. So the closer you make these two ranges, or these two range values, the more confined that paint's going to be. Now I'm going to take this mask and set it to -1, so it's on my background only again. I'm going to put this gray range back down to 0. And just like when we were messing with the depth values here, you can actually click and drag off of this object and select a color. Now as I'm dragging over this object, you're going to see that color range isn't changing, and that's because it's selecting the colors that my actual object have. What that means is like the vertex color that my object is. If I want to select the values that I actually see on my screen after I hit BPR filter, what I have to do is hold down Alt. And now as I drag over this object, you're going to see it's going to grab light gray. And then as I go into the shadow area, it's going to be darker and then darker still. So if I want to set this range just by selecting what I see on my render here, what I can do is I can hold down Alt and then just click inside here. And then if I want to set that same value, I can just touch this one, hold down Alt, and then just select that one. And now I set it to be the exact very narrow range that essentially is that value right there. I'm going to set that mask back to 1, so it's just selecting this object here. Of course, I'm going to have to take this gray range and crank that up to 100 again. And you're going to see that range is so narrow, it's actually the same color, that it's not selecting anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to nudge these ranges apart a little bit. This upper end range, I'm going to just kind of nudge it up just a bit. And then this lower end range, I'm going to nudge it down a little bit. And now you're going to see it's grabbing the grays in that area. And always remember, if you want to, you can take this filter here, we can copy it, we can put it in here, and then we can paste it. And now this filter, we're going to go ahead and set that to like maybe a yellowish orange, and then go down here. And this gray range will set to -100. And now we've got red for those values, and then every other value is set to orange. And of course, you don't have to set it to 100. You can actually drop this down. And then same thing for the red. You can take this gray range and you can drop this down, and that'll be a little bit more inclusive, and you can kind of dial those in and get a cool effect that way.